morning, Axis Middletown. How we doing? All right. Well, hey, my name is Josh, if we have not met, and I come from a far-off place called Mason, Ohio, and I'm the campus pastor down there, and it is good to be with you. I joked in the meeting beforehand. I said, I don't know what I said last time I was here, but it's been a year since I've been invited back. So for what that's worth, but here I am. So we're going to have a fun time today. Kids are in the room today, right? Kids all in. If you're a kid in the room, just give me a whoop, all right? Let me hear it. All right, what about kids at heart? Let me hear you too. All right, there we go. All right, we're going to have some fun. All right, well, hey, it's summertime, and summertime is good. We came up with a little summer bucket list. Not that we hope to kick the bucket during summer or the end of summer, but things to do by the end of summer. And so we've been kind of just doing some fun stuff. One of the things on our list, like we've already hit some of the things early on, and one of the things my kids have been wanting to go to the zoo. And I told them, we live at the zoo, and some of you can relate to this. Like, I have 3 boys, like it is a zoo all the time, but I'm like, I'll take you anyway. And so we went just last week, and it was fun. And just as kind of a fun part of this, how many of you have been to the zoo recently? Like, you've been, it hasn't been, okay, so some of you have zoo passes, you go to the zoo. Like, the zoo is always an experience, isn't it? I mean, the sights, the smells, I mean, there is just, it's all of the senses are involved, and it's a good time. So when we went this past time, I was like, we're going to just have some fun with some different things. And so I told them, I'd ask them like a question, we basically came up with what amounted to superlatives, right? So, like a superlative, like senior superlatives, like most this, best this. So we came up with zooperlatives. So you guys are going to participate, and we're going to do some zooperlatives today. And I was asking the kids this as we went through. I was like, all right, I want you to, on this category, from everything you've seen or anything that's at the zoo, I want you to vote on one. And so I want you to help us narrow down some of the ones that we had voted on. And so you're going to throw up a right hand if the answer is the one on the right side of the screen, left hand if it's on the left side of the screen, and I'm going to be backwards and messed up the whole time because I'm this direction. So here's the first one. Here's an example of a zooperlative. Most likely to take home as a pet, all right? Because you've thought about it, right? When you're at the zoo, you're like, now, they don't want you to take them home as pets. It's not encouraged. But if you had to pick, okay, so one on this side, raise this hand, this side, this hand. So the one on the right was my vote, okay? That was the meerkat. I mean, these things are just teeny tiny, like they're super small, they're fun. At one point, the little meerkat just stood up and looked at me like this. He's just like, I'm like, you're my dude. Like, this guy was awesome. But Jude was like baby sloth all the way, And some of you, I see a lot of sloth votes out there. And so there's apparently about to be another sloth born, which is really cool. Now, here's the good news with a sloth as a pet. You ain't never heard anybody say my sloth ran away, right? There's more of those jokes coming, so just bear with me. But, it's like, okay, we left the fence open, but we got back, and he's still here, okay? He was making a break for it, but we're still good. All right, what about this one for worst haircut, okay? Worst haircut on the right or the left? I mean, come on. Like, there's some sweet haircuts. Like, so you got, this guy's name is Wardy. I don't know what his name was, but he had that same, look on his face the whole time. Sweet beard. Okay, so I voted for Wardy. I don't know where that guy gets his haircut, but I'm not going there. So there's your worst haircut. What about this? We're calling this one Smelly Kid in Class, okay? My parents used to say to me when I'd be like, I don't want to take a shower tonight, they'd be like, Josh, you don't want to be the smelly kid in class, all right? So I don't know if I actually would have been. But so you've got, now we all know, some of you vote elephants. The elephant house is just, it's potent. Like, you smell it before you even get there. It's rough. But I'm telling you right now, if you have been to that little flamingo exhibit, I'm talking all out gag reflex. I'm going to do it right now. And so the flamingo's got my vote. All right, what about this one? Most likely to be in my nightmares. Most likely to be in my nightmares. All right, you guys are passionate about this one. You're like, can you do both hands? Yeah, some of you are both. I'm both hands. I can't vote because some of you are going to have nightmares about both of these things tonight. I actually was in the backyard the other day, walking around, and I was up on this board looking for a ball that we hit in the woods, and I see this snake slithering at me. He was coming for me. And I was all of a sudden just high stepping out of there, like as if that's going to help me. And my Aiden looks at me, he's like, Dad, what was it? I was like, it's a snake. He's like, how big was it? I was like, it was like a python. Like, it was huge. It was really probably like a garter snake. But all snakes not on my list. They're all in my nightmares. So, all right, how about this one? Least likely to cuddle with. Least likely to cuddle with. They look like you want to cuddle with them, right? That's the thing. You don't want to try, though. I promise you that. There was a little kid, like, standing by the lion exhibit, and I'm like, he's, like, doing little faces. I'm like, if I was the lion, I'd just be like, you know, rah, like, right then. Like, so both of these things are highly dangerous, just so you know. The gorilla pose says it all. He's like, come on, somebody mess with me. You know, he's waiting for it. But there you go. This category could also be most likely to rip your face off, okay? But they're all very dangerous animals. Now, of everything that I saw, and some of you are like this, all of the things that I saw at the zoo, the most interesting to me, the most fascinating is still the people. How many of you go to the zoo just to watch the people? Like it's like I am a people watcher. Like I like to observe, like to see people's interactions. I like to see that other people's kids, you know, are like riled up too there. It's like, but I'm watching all of the things. And I mean this in all sincerity. The people are fascinating. And if I were to give a category to human beings today, to each and every one of us, the category would be, the superlative would be most precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, all are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. And you know, out of all the animal kingdom and all of what can be found at the zoo, there's still something distinct about what God created when he created humankind. Humanity ranks as highest in intrinsic and eternal value of all that God made and declared good. He looked upon creation following humankind, and he declared it very good. He looked at you and me, and he saw something unique, something special, something that he put there, that he infused there, as you and I were created in the image of God. And by the way, this is not to diminish the value of the animal world, rather elevate the value of humankind. Jesus' words reinforce human value when he says, are not two sparrows sold for a penny, and not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father, but even the hairs on your head are all numbered. Now I say that, you hear that, do you believe that? Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. Friends, if you hear one thing I say today, hear this. You are valuable. And there's two things that we really see, and more than this, but let me point out a couple things. The first thing that really differentiates us apart from any other creation is that there is an eternal quality to being human. C.S. Lewis put it this way. He said, there's no ordinary people. You've never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, art, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life to ours is the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. It's something fascinating to think about, right? When you look at the people around you, that there is this eternal quality to each and every one of them. And by the way, there is a relational quality to every human being you encounter. No other being in the entirety of creation has the capacity and need for love that you and I have. And potentially that's because it was placed there. It was created in that way. Only humankind was designed with an innate need for and capacity to truly love. Even though there's animals that might show social patterns and emotional responses and all this and that, there's some fascinating animals, I'm not saying that. But we, in a very unique way, were created from love, to love. Maybe what the Beatles said was right, and I don't necessarily probably agree with the kind of love they're talking about, but what they said is all we need is love. Love is all we need. I found this article actually not too long ago, and it pointed out, it was from the Wall Street Journal, it pointed out that it did this survey, and what they found was that Americans are not a particularly happy bunch, believe it or not. 12%, which was the smallest share of this survey, said that they were very happy, And so, of course, they asked the question, well, what was it in that category? Because if there's any group of people I want to be in the 12%, right? I want to be in the very happy category. And so when they looked at what was it that really separated this group, You would think, well, maybe they just had it really easy, right? Like it must be their circumstances were really good, but it wasn't a product of circumstance. People in this category were facing the same challenges all of us face, some of them dealing with deep tragedies and awful illnesses. They were among both political parties. They ranged in socioeconomic status. They existed among all cultural backgrounds, so it wasn't any of those things that distinguished them. But when they called to see what stood out among this group, they found two things that were very evident. Number one, overwhelmingly, the very happy valued strong relationships. They invested in deep and meaningful relationships. Number two, they tended to say that belief in God is important. Isn't that interesting? The two things that God's been telling us all along from his word, that we should love God and love people. Maybe that really is all we need. Maybe really that is the epicenter of what it looks like to live a life that flourishes. And that's what I want to put before you today as we dive back into 1 John. If you look at John's original gospel, when he writes his eyewitness testimony of Jesus, in John chapter 13, he talks about this moment as Jesus is preparing himself for the cross. And he gives us a really good picture of what it looks like for us, for believers of Jesus and those that are exploring the way of Jesus, to live and capture love in a way that is not just a diluted version of it, but is a biblical kind of love, the kind of love that allows us to flourish. And here's what Jesus said. He said, "My children, I will be with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so I will tell you now, where I am going, you cannot come. A new command I give you then, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." Did you pick it up? He said it 3 times, right? What is the distinctive characteristic of disciples of Jesus, those that are living in the way of Jesus? How we love one another. This is the great distinctive. And without love, we flounder. With love, we flourish. So a question I really want to chat about today here for just a little while is, how can we make sure that we're living in the way of love? How can we experience love in the way that God intended for us? So I'm going to talk for just a little bit about how love changes everything, starting with us. And by the way, this chapter that I was given, 1 John chapter 3, is so dense. We would need an entire series just for this chapter. So I'm just going to bring some things to the surface here today, some sections of this, but I do encourage you to go back and just continue to read this entire letter through, because, by the way, this wasn't written in little segments, or little snapshots or little Twitter posts. It was written as an entire letter. And so continue to read that as we walk through this series. So here's the first thing about love. Love is what marks us. And in 1 John 3, 1 through 2, it says, "See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known." And so John sort of operates in this tension of, we don't know what love fully culminated is going to look like, but here's what we do know, that we are marked by the love of the Father. And notice the descriptive words here. He uses the word like great love. Notice great love. And the word lavished, right? Like, God is not stingy in extending his love to us, that he is lavish in his love to all those who will receive it. And that is a fascinating reality. Those words that we just sung, like, how my sin was deep, your love was deeper. This unquenchable love of God. Often my office is typically just Kala Coffee House, which is a coffee house that's attached to our church. And so I get a lot of opportunities to interact with different people. I really enjoy that. One reason is because I'm ADD and I love interruptions. So I'd say that seriously. I love when somebody's like, "Hey, how you doing?" So I sit out there looking for things to distract me, right? And I actually work better in that environment. But I met this guy a while back who turned out he had some similar interests as me. His friend was wearing a CrossFit t-shirt, so we were kind of talking about that. But I came to talk to this guy, and I learned that he's really passionate about disciple making. He actually is a local pastor. He's he's a little bit older than me, and I'm always like seeking those guys out to be like, man, this guy, like I can just tell in the conversation, like he just has a wealth of wisdom. He's been on the journey longer than me, and he's been in ministry for longer than me. And so I asked him, I was like, can we hang out sometime? And so we went and we grabbed some coffee. I know a place, and so we sat down there at Kala. We're like having some coffee, and Bill is his name. We'll call him Pastor Bill. Pastor Bill was like, look, Josh, can I just pray for you? Like, can we pray together as we get started? And I'm like, yeah, like, of course. Like, I'm never going to say no to that. And so he prays for me. I'm like, I don't know what he's going to pray. Like, this guy is like, he's like a giant in ministry. Like, he's been doing this a lot. Like, what's he going to say? And I loved it because there was just this, like, this humbling kind of moment when he began to pray. Like, of all the things he could have prayed for our ministry and that God would just pour out favor and bless us and all this stuff. But what he prayed instead, he just closed his eyes and we gathered together in prayer, and he just goes, Father, it's just so good to be your kids. It's just so good to be your kids. And as he prayed that, you could tell that he's so wrapped up in this reality of just being a child of God. Like, it's just so good to be your kids. And one of the things that I thought after that conversation is, man, I got a lot of growing to do, number one. But number two, perhaps one of the greatest marks of maturity is how wrapped up we are in that reality. God, it's just so good to be your kids. When one's delight and definition of oneself is completely tied to simply being God's kids. And this is the tone that you get as John writes this letter of 1 John. He's like, what great love the Father has lavished on us that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. It's like after all of these years on the journey, John still hasn't gotten over this fact that he is a child of God. And this is how he identifies himself. He even identifies himself in his eyewitness testimony as the one that Jesus loved. Like, this was what his identity was wrapped up in, being a child of God. Karl Barth, who was arguably one of the greatest theologians of the 20th century, really sharp guy, way smarter than me, and he's written all these great volumes and great works, and people quote him all the time. And toward kind of the end of his career, he was kind of going around and on some university campuses, and he was talking about some of these things like church dogmatics and all of these big theological concepts. And somebody asked him at the end of it, like at the end of one of his talks, like this genius guy in the field of theology, they're like, hey, can you sum up your stuff in like 2 sentences? You know, like, that's an interesting question, right? Like, you're asking me to, it's like asking Einstein to just give me the bullet points. Like, I just, you know, and so people were a little bit like turned off, like, what is this guy asking? And Dr. Barth, he thought about it for a little while, and he sat there, and then he just very succinctly replied, and just in a heartfelt way replied back to the student, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. I'd say that's a pretty good summary. Ephesians 3:14 through 17 says, for this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory he may grant you to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And here's the best part. That you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. You looking for something to pray? I'd start right there. God, just help me to understand how wide, how deep, how broad is your love. My sin is deep. His love is deeper. The love of God, friends, is what marks us. And by the way, our love or loves are what makes us or potentially breaks us. As we walk in the way of Jesus, what we see is we can be marked by love, and we can also be remade by love, shaped by love. In 1 John 3:2 through 6, it says, but we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him. At one point, we are going to be made like Christ in every way. All who have this hope then in him purify themselves just as he is pure. And so building on this idea of love, and then it goes on to say, everyone who sins breaks the law. In fact, sin is lawlessness, but that you know that he appeared so that he might take away our sins. And in him is no sin. No one who lives in him then keeps on sinning. No one who continues to sin has either seen him or known him. Now, this can be a little bit confusing because we start to say, wait a minute. Like, I don't ever sin again, right, when I receive. Because plain reading of this kind of suggests that, but that's not what he's saying. He's building on this idea of love. And there's nothing that when we receive the love of God changes God's love for us. My son asked me on the way in here, he's like, Dad, how proud of me are you? And it was a great gospel opportunity. I'm like, I'm just as proud as I'll ever be of you. Because you don't have to earn that, right? And same with God. Like, we have the opportunity to receive the full weight of God's love simply by reaching out our hands and receiving it, so we don't earn that. But what happens is when we really experience truly that love, it shapes us. It shifts our life. It changes the trajectory and lifestyle. So he's saying, listen, once you've been overtaken by love, you don't keep walking on that trajectory of sin anymore. We're not on that path anymore. We're walking on a new path. And so what I would say to you this morning is that where your love leads, your life follows. And so that's really important for us to be aware of, the things that we're loving, the things that really captivate us and stir our hearts. Paul writes this to Timothy when he says, I was flooded with such incredible grace like a river, overflowing its banks until I was full of faith and love for Jesus, the anointed one. And I'd say that's the positive thing to love, the ultimate thing that we should love, because where love leads, our life follows. Unfortunately, this isn't just true for the love of God. That's why in some of the section we already covered in 1 John 2, John warns, he says, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love for the Father is not in them. These are two different paths, right? These things don't coexist well together. One is going to overtake the other. Either our love for God is going to overtake, or our love for the world is going to overtake us. And this is why love can make or break us. James Smith says it this way. He says, to be a human is to be a lover and to love something as ultimate. You can't not love. So the question isn't whether you will love something as ultimate. The question is what you will love as ultimate. And then he goes on to say, and you are what you love. Augustine said it this way. He says, my weight is my love. Wherever I am carried, my love is carrying me. The great reformer Martin Luther once said, whatever your heart clings to and confides in, that is really your love. John Calvin said, the heart, he referred to the heart as an idol factory. Now, why do I give you all those quotes? All this is to say that it's important to take an inventory of what dominates our heart. What is it that captivates us? So when John says that those who live in God do not continue to sin, again, he means we take on this new trajectory. A heart bent on God is drawn away from sin into life, is drawn out of darkness into light, is drawn away from the things of the world and into the things and toward the things of God. Where love leads, your life follows. And so let me ask you that question. What dominates your heart? Or who dominates your heart? What do you love? Love is what marks us. Love is what makes us or breaks us. And love is what moves us. This is how we know who the children of God are, John says, and who the children of the devil are. Anyone who does not do what is right is not God's child, nor is anyone who does not love their brother and sister. For this is the message you heard from the beginning. We should love one another. And so John gives a little litmus test here. He says, here's a couple of things that you can visibly see that are different, some fruit in the life of a disciple versus somebody that's not living the way of Jesus and is trying to live in opposition to God. Because God's love doesn't live undetectable in us. There are two ways in which it surfaces. Number one, you see right there, anyone who does what is right. And by the way, he makes a habit of doing what's right, is compelled to do what is right. Number two, anyone who loves their brother and sister. This is a mark of love being activated in our life. One theologian said, love does not permit the lover to rest in himself. It draws him out of himself so that he may be entirely in the beloved. Love is not matured until it has moved us outside of ourselves. And some of you know, because you've experienced it, that is an uncomfortable feeling. Love's not just this warm, fuzzy feeling. It's this thing that draws us, that compels us and pulls us out of ourselves, that we're willing to sacrifice our own needs, our own comfort for the one that we love. And by the way, just be warned, the more that you let love in, the more it's going to crowd hate out. And that gets uncomfortable when we really evaluate our own space. The more that you let love in, the more that it crowds indifference out. The more that you let love in, the more that it crowds apathy out. Let love in, but be warned, it will mark you, it will make you, and it will ultimately move you. You know, when somebody says or prays that God would move, one of the things that, somebody's telling me, man, I'm just asking that God would move in my life. In fact, we had on the back of our little prayer board, you guys had a prayer board up for a while, somebody had written just the word move on the board with 3 exclamation marks, like as if this was their prayer request, like God, just move, like just do something, right? And what I've found is that often when we make that request of God, he makes that same request of us. In fact, God's probably up there like, hey, I'm already moving. I'm already working now. Like, when will you join me? And potentially that is where some of us are at today, where we're just praying, God, move. Would you just do something? Yet here we are, and we're not joining him in the thing that he is trying to accomplish. And sometimes we're working in complete opposition of him. But what I've found is that when people start to pray that prayer, like, God, would you move? Would you do something? The first something that he does, he starts to move in here. He starts to move in here, and he starts to move me, and he starts to tap somebody on the shoulder like, hey, I got something for you. I got something for you to do. Or so he taps them on the shoulder, or rather tugs on their heart and just says, I got something for you. And I'll look at some of those stories, and I'm always so fascinated by them. Like, what is it that, like, moved this person to do that thing? Like, to do this countercultural thing, or to do this thing that nobody else is doing. Like, I hear these stories and I experience these stories. Like, for example, what moves a man who's been beat down by cancer for months to thank God for the blessing and lessons of it and make his primary prayer that he could impact others through his experience? Like, what moves somebody to do that? What leads a man to remain a dedicated servant in ministry for over 40 years, many of those years also working full-time, running his own business, leaving a legacy that's still being built upon today? Like, what is it that makes someone do that? What spurs someone to be an intentional neighbor when most of us just pull into our garage, shut the garage door, right, and try to avoid everyone, keep to ourselves? What makes someone relationally engage people in their neighborhood, making it their mission field while opening their home each week? Like, what is it that moves somebody to do such a thing? What compels a man who is reeling from tragedy to turn to God rather than turning to the things everyone else turns to escape their problem? And in the middle of the valley continues to chase the God of love. What motivates a young couple with 2 young kids to give up a secure role at a big church, leaving all their community behind to pursue an unknown adventure in a new city? Like, what moves somebody to do that? What stirs a young mom with her hands full with her own kids to often work full-time hours at a part-time job, investing in other people's kids and families? What compels somebody to thank God for being downsized and elect to not chase a big paycheck, but instead pursue the path of greatest impact? I believe that the answer to that question is the same for each and every one of these. It's love. And all of these people sit or have sat in the very seats that you're sitting in right now. 2 Corinthians 5:14 through 15 says, "For Christ's love compels us because we are convinced that one died for all and therefore all died. And he died for all that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again." Our request of God is, God, would you move? And his request of us is, would you move? Would you move? We tomorrow are going to do a workout. Connor and I are going to do it together. And tomorrow, as you know, is Memorial Day. And it's a very special day. It's a very special holiday on the American calendar because of what it represents and what it means. And so to commemorate this, we're going to do this workout. It's a super long workout, but it's in honor of a guy named Michael Murphy. And every time we do this workout, we tell the story of Michael Murphy. And I'm just going to give you kind of the brief version if you've never heard the story of Michael Murphy. But Basically, Michael Murphy, if you've ever seen the movie Lone Survivor, he was the leader of that group. They got dropped in Taliban territory because in America we say we don't ever leave a man behind. And so they dropped in there to get this guy out from captivity. And so when they got dropped in there, Michael Murphy was leading this group, and they came along this road where they saw this group of shepherds. And they were just what they considered, civilians. And because of that, they couldn't engage these folks or do anything about this, but they knew this could be problematic. And so they continued on. And before long, these shepherds had run back into the villages, alerted the Taliban, and it wasn't long before this Navy SEAL team was pinned down by gunfire. And Michael Murphy, as the leader of this group, made a decision to say, I am going to get a call out for rescue, because the sat phone was not working where they were at. He knew he would have to go take higher ground. And so in going to this higher ground, he knew what his fate would be. That by making this call for rescue, he would be gunned down in the process because he would be exposed. And so he takes the walk up the hill, he makes the phone call, he dispatches help, and the very last words out of Michael Murphy's mouth were, "Thank you," to the person on the other line. And if you know the story, you know that one of his brothers was saved that day, that lone survivor, because Michael Murphy was willing to lay down his life. And one of the things that John Sanchez always talks about, who's our friend, is a Navy SEAL that knew Michael Murphy, when he tells this story, is he says, it's interesting, guys, because, a lot of us are like, man, like, what a shame, what a tragedy, and it is a shame, and it is a tragedy. But he points out that, for a Navy SEAL and for those in the armed forces, there is no greater honor than to give up your life for another. Like, they see it as the greatest honor to get to make that decision, to give up their life for another. And so this weekend we remember, as we wear our American flag t-shirts and our red, white, and blue, and we pose for pictures, that we remember those who had those colors draped over their casket, coming home not to see their family again, but because they were willing to lay down their life for their friends. And as followers of Jesus, we always remember that Jesus paid the ultimate sacrifice, that he is marked by the greatest honor because he laid down his life for you and for me. And before he laid down his life, he made this comment to his disciples. He said, "There is no greater expression of love than to lay down your life for your friends." And so it is that love, friends, that marks us. It is that love, friends, that makes us. And it's that love that moves us. God, we thank you for your goodness today. We thank you for your love. God, I pray that we can continue to get swept up in your love anew, in the reality that comes because of it, that we get to be called your children, that we are children of God. And so if somebody walked in here this morning feeling a little less than valuable, would you just breathe that reminder into them, that you would etch that image of you on the cross in their mind? Jesus saying, "This is how much I loved you." And so, God, we just want to continue to get caught up in that love. We want to continue, God, to allow that love to shape our lives, and that's what we're all about around here. Being people that are marked by love and shaped by love and moved by love, God. And so I pray that we could pray a dangerous prayer, and maybe somebody prays a dangerous prayer today, and that prayer is simply this: God, move us for what moves you. That's how we live in Middletown, Ohio. That's how we live in our neighborhoods. That's how we continue to pour ourselves into our families. It's not about what we get out of it. We are moved by the God of love, God. And so our prayer today, and I pray that our prayer continues to be, as a church family, God, move us for what moves you.